lands face down, you'll be squashed flat. It lands face up, it'll just break every bone in your body.
Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. Halloween is a time for costumes, candy, and for some, horror movies. I've never been a big fan myself, but that certainly doesn't have to stop anyone else from enjoying them, like the subjects of today's review. While I've covered a couple of Generation X comics previously, they've strictly been crossovers with Gen 13, so this is the first time I'm looking at the original title. For the uninitiated, Professor Xavier opened up a second school in Massachusetts for the next generation of X-Men, hence the pun. Its headmasters were Sean Cassidy, aka Banshee, and Emma Frost, the White Queen, early in her days of reforming from her more villainous turn. The team consisted of Jubilee, who'd often brag about her time with the primary X-Men team, Skin, a young man with a gray excess of epidermis, Synch, who could duplicate the powers of those around him, M, the rich girl with numerous abilities, Chamber, a psionic whose excess power destroyed half his face and must always cover it up, Paige Guthrie, who could remove her skin to reveal a new exterior, and Pennant, a mute girl with razor claws and diamond-hard skin. The team also started with a guy named Mondo, but he's not in this issue. How they failed to make it on MTV's Real World, we'll never know. I'm taking issue with Generation X number 41, Massachusetts Chainsaw Massacre. Let's see if this comic gives us the chills, or just has a couple of annoying jump scares. The cover sees Jubilee in the dark with a mysterious figure covering her mouth and brandishing a knife. Sheesh, what'd she do to tick off Joe Quesada? She's not a redhead or married to Spider-Man. Scream for your life, Jubilee! These new game shows are getting a little too extreme if you ask me. Written by Larry Hama, with art by Ale Garza, Felix Serrano, and Cabin Boy.
Thank you, fellow crewmates. I'm off. And when I return, I shall be a cabin man.
We begin in the campus TV room. Headmasters Sean and Emma are away, presumably on business, and the students are settling in for the night. The girls are painting their nails, though Jubes has trouble with Penance's claws. I'm no expert, but why is she coloring them entirely? Why just not a small area of the top portions? As a comic reviewer, it's very important that this story about superpowered teenagers get its makeup practices right. Skin returns from a video store with a stack of rented movies about 3 feet tall by my estimate. Yeah, they're VHS, but still, that's a lot. He trips on the rug, accidentally sending them flying across the room, where we see the titles. Yell, Friday the 14th, Sicko, All Hallows Eve. This was the last time Angelo was allowed to rent movies. He always went straight to the mockbuster bin. Monet is disappointed that they're all slasher films like Silence of the Sheep, insisting she, and presumably the other ladies, would have preferred girl movies. And the fact that the girls in these selected features end up getting murdered doesn't make it any better. She goes to check on snack preparation, handled by Synch and Chamber. She criticizes them, saying they're the least capable, though I'm not sure why. It's clearly a work in progress, there's no indication that they've gone past some deadline, and nothing really seems to be going terribly wrong. And she won't help until her nails have dried. Where's a sentinel attack when you need one? One hiccup, however, is the microwave seems to be on the fritz, so Chamber decides to use a bit of psionic energy from his face on the popcorn. This works a little too well, causing the puffy treats to explode across the kitchen and ruin M's nail polish, thus beginning her villain origin story. I'm kidding, of course. She's not the member of the team who turns evil, though I remember that little surprise being about as stupid as turning traitor over nail polish. Marathoning all the movies would take days, so Angelo opts to get right to the grisly action by going fast-fo through the boring plot stuff.
Plot? What an odd word. Plot. Plot, 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 plot. Plot, 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 plot.
Also, as someone who grew up around the time these comics came out, I can say I never heard anyone ever abbreviate fast forward as fast fo. He speeds through the movie right to a still frame of Jason Voorhees about to attack someone. Wait, are these mockbusters really just literal copies of famous movies and relabeled? How was there never a follow-up story where She-Hulk or Daredevil took these plagiarists to court? Skin jokingly wraps up Jubilee's face, noting how she's too young to watch R-rated or NC-17 movies, even if they've all seen worse in real life. Nevertheless, Jonathan says impressionable minds can be warped by the old ultra-violence. I've seen Wolverine after bad hangovers and smelled Beast after he got caught in a rainstorm. If none of that warped me, nothing will. Everett joins in, noting how scary movies have caused seizures or terminal dream syndrome. Is that nightmares about airports? No, it's actually when you're so frustrated by your flight, between check-in, the TSA, waiting to be boarded, and taxiing on the tarmac, that you slip into a coma and write it all out while unconscious. Monet clarifies that it refers to an apocryphal theory that dying in a dream causes you to die in real life. Page says it's not real, but Skin, based on a TV segment he saw, insists otherwise. Spontaneous combustion, alien abduction, poltergeists. We've seen them all. All of those have logical explanations. The poltergeists were just heroes you thought were dead, but really out of phase with time. The alien abductions were Shi'ar Girl Scouts selling cookies, and the spontaneous combustion was because a smoker sat too close to the blob after he just won a chili dog eating contest. That's just science. Husk chides them for messing with the kid's head, and despite admitting how creeped out she is at how much sense the syndrome makes, Jubilee insists she's no baby, and suggests they skip to even gorier fare. I feel like her expression shouldn't be so sullen, if she's intent on proving she's not scared. I think she should look more like a mixture of determined and indignant. Anyway, Angelo obliges, putting in the movie that the story's named after. Give or take a hyphen. Sometime later, Jubilee awakes on the couch, alone, figuring she nodded out, another phrase I've never heard before, and leaves the TV room to see a granny lady up the stairs, wielding a butcher knife. Door-to-door salespeople have gotten aggressive lately. Lee bumps into Skin, who also saw the mystery guest, but figures it's Everett, Monet, or Jonathan joking around, but is reminded by his teammate that none of them have a sense of humor. Seriously, M's idea of an April Fool's Day prank was buying me new clothes off the rack from Kmart. She didn't even care that they all fit my style. She thought it was hilarious. The stranger goes into the bathroom where Paige is showering, and Skin warns her about the maniac with the knife. Angelo, of all the lame excuses for barging in on me taking a shower. That time you told me Galactus was about to devour the planet and the only portal to safety was in the shower drain was original, but still creepy. She finds out this isn't a prank, but is able to generate a brick-like form to break the blade and save herself. There's little room in the panel to actually show it, so it's explained a tad awkwardly by Jubilee, as she blasts off the old lady's wig to reveal Bastion, the anti-mutant cyborg most famously known from the Zero Tolerance storyline. I didn't know dresses were your thing, Bastion. Simply a means to an end, Gene Trash. He says that, but you just know he's got a whole wardrobe he puts on to feel pretty, but he keeps it hush-hush because he knows most of his followers would leave him if they ever found out. He has a bomb strapped to his chest, and notes how it goes without saying that he'd employ any means to rid the world of mutants as he presses the detonator. I'm sure it had nothing to do with how he got caught peeping on a teenager in the shower. After the explosion, Paige grips the curtains and collapses in the tub, dead. Angelo's quizzical expression at the death of his friend is rather weird, but as Jubilee realizes, she's having a bad dream, from the scary movies and sugary food. She tries to wake herself up by splashing water on her face, but no go, and that's when a Kruger-esque Sabretooth bursts from the floor. Angelo gets panicked, wanting Lee to wake up already, because dream or no, he's the one about to get diced up. He's just a figment of my overactive imagination fueled by too much sugar and carbohydrates. Why are you explaining this again? You already pointed out this was a dream and that your snack choices probably played a part in it. This feels like unnecessary repetition for information we already have. As Dream Angelo predicted, he gets killed, and Jubilee flees, growing increasingly scared as she still won't wake up. She tries to warn Monet about the impending evisceration. Head for the hills! The hills are rather dusty, and I've just put a clear lacquer coat on. Also, I hear the hills are alive with the sound of music, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna be country. As a rich snob, I'm obligated to only listen to classical. I'm snobligated, if you will. She stays put, waiting for her nails to dry, and ends up the next victim. Penance shows up and gives Krugertooth a taste of his own medicine. But who's that behind our fireworks girl but Omega Red? And wow, I hope the juxtaposition of him behind an underage girl that's slightly bent over was accidental. The brute axes Penny's skull, and while Jubilee reminds herself this isn't real, she's uncertain what'll happen if she dies in the dream. She runs into Chamber and insists he's zapped the villain, whom Jano seems to think is wearing a goalie mask when that's clearly a face mask. Does Jonathan not know what a goalie mask looks like, or is hockey really different in England? He unleashes some fiery energy on the threat, totally confident he's taken care of the killer, until Red emerges from the flames and takes him out as well. Running into the kitchen, Jubilee tries warning Everett, but since he's unconvinced of any danger, she goes looking for any good hiding spots. Not enough room in the dishwasher. Yeah, and if you don't use the right detergent for that machine, you'll get some spots and probably some leftover meatloaf stuck to the surface. There's also this odd placement of this empty, transparent jar. It seems like it's meant to distort Lee from the background, possibly to make her chest appear bigger as some kind of gag, playing on a horror trope of some kind. The line work does seem to be detailing the bottom edges of the jar itself, but it's so specifically placed, it's difficult not to think that maybe they're going for a boob joke or something. Anyway, they hear a chainsaw and it's being used by M-Plate, wearing butcher's clothes and a tattered mask.
Some nice tasty human genomes for supper. Shall we have them filleted or as steak tartare?
Oh, don't try to sound all fancy. You're just gonna throw them in the microwave until they get too dry and slather them in mayo and mustard, you wannabe gourmet. His goon DOA is there too, but he only shows up in one panel, then disappears. M-Plate chainsaws through the fallen fridge in his way, as Sink tries holding him off with Jubilee's chump powers, as he calls them. If I was Paige, you'd be standing around shedding. You know I lost my hair to advanced male pattern baldness, and I'm sensitive about the word shedding. Show some empathy when we're about to be murdered. Everett gets chopped by Omega Red, so dream karma? Nothing worked after Jubes threw everything and everyone at the killers, including the kitchen sink. With Granny cosplayer Bastion and Creed returning, all four villains advance on a cornered Jubilation, who laments her inability to wake up. Man, isn't it frustrating how nothing ever seems to work right in dreams? I find it more frustrating to read awkwardly delivered dialogue. Are you having a nightmare or breaking the fourth wall Looney Tunes style?
Don't you believe it?
She finally wakes up, surrounded by her friends, who were becoming worried about her. She explains her nightmare, how logic can get skewed in dreams, and wasn't sure if she'd wake up if she got killed. I even suspected all of you were wearing masks and playing a trick on me. No, you didn't! You specifically pointed out how 3 of your teammates didn't have the sense of humor for that kind of thing, realized it was a dream, and saw them all brutally murdered one by one. That all seems like the opposite of suspecting you were the target of an elaborate joke. However, seeing that they all look somewhat guilty, she notices what they have behind their backs. Ghostface-like masks, which she quickly realizes they'd planned to use to scare her. As Jubilee starts unleashing her fireworks, her team scatters, and the comic ends with Paige remarking that Lee's mind did a far better job frightening her than any of them could have managed. That was Massachusetts Chainsaw Massacre, and it was so-so. There were several problems that I think were overlooked because it was meant as a fun standalone. Don't get me wrong, I think they did a great job integrating all these iconic horror movies, and for anyone that does enjoy that genre, there seem to be plenty of Easter eggs, from the scream masks to the Psycho death scene homage, and maybe a few more I don't recognize. Even the movie killers seemed appropriately paired with the comic villains, if only gauged by Jubilee's mind. Bastion is Norman Bates, who appeared human, but no one could tell he was a cyborg at first. Victor Creed as Freddy. One website I saw suggested that M-Plate was supposed to be Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th, but the apron, chainsaw, and cannibalistic tendencies seem more indicative of Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The same site said Omega Red was emulating Michael Myers from Halloween, but I can't say how that'd relate to the Marvel character. Certainly explains why his face has a more human visage, but not the mistake about calling it a goalie mask. Miscommunication between writer and artists, or Chamber being a moron. You decide. The story plays out fine, despite moments of exposition that I'm not sure were really needed, and the characters are all nicely comfortable with each other, getting along as easily as giving each other grief. Monet does seem to give off a kind of stereotype that girls can't like slasher films, and only like whatever she means by girl movies. But as neither Paige nor Jubes really echo her sentiments, maybe it's more that she's a spoiled rich kid. Sometimes the dialogue just got weird, slang terms I'd never heard before, but hey, maybe Larry Hama or an editor had. Other times, maybe a little clunky, like Jubilee citing carbohydrates for her nightmare in one of several times it's pointed out this is happening because of junk food and scary stories. Lee's comments at the end about suspecting her teammates made zero sense and didn't really seem like necessary setup for the reveal that they'd planned on spooking her. As it is, she immediately realized it was a dream, which seemed to kill off any tension for the story. Though granted, her inability to wake up did bring some of that back, much like the horror icons in their various sequels. Even her fear of dying in real life from a dream fatality could have been done better. Maybe, as the guy who, in the waking world, lent credence to the terminal dream syndrome, Dream Angelo could remind her of it before he's taken out. It might not be a big deal if he gets gored, but what about Jubes herself? This would make her ensuing fear more believable, though it wouldn't explain her fluctuating reactions to her various teammates' deaths, or how little effort she puts into fighting back. Maybe they didn't want to be too genuinely scary, but it would have helped sell our heroine's fear and uncertainty in the moment. Heck, even I've died in a dream or two when I was younger. The first time I was 10 years old, dreamed I was shot in the back by mobsters in my own backyard. But I didn't really die. I'm just dead emotionally.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
The art is fine for the most part, but whereas characters at a certain closeness have detailed eyes, it changes to just black dots over flesh tones when they're at a certain distance. This isn't uncommon in comics, but here it feels overall inconsistent and can look kind of weird, like they don't really fit well together. Some comics have done it for comedic purposes, but it didn't seem to be the case with this issue. Some panels showed the minimum amount of visual information, possibly for spacing reasons, but it did make some pages feel a tad cluttered as a result. Also, I guess Angelo was at least 18, since he was able to rent those particular movies, but it seemed weird that everyone seemed to be treating Jubilee as so much younger, when I think she's supposed to be 14 or 15, and the others seem like they could be 15 or 16. Though there are some panels where she does look a lot younger than them for whatever reason. This story is okay, probably more fun for fans of horror cinema, if only for the references. It's fine that it's all a dream in the end, but there were some noticeable cracks that I think could have been filled out to its betterment. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.